Hello, everybody, and welcome to Season 9 of the Failcast F1, the podcast all about F1 action that you never knew you needed until you happened upon us in a garbage bin somewhere. My name is Bolkenberg, and alongside me, as always, is our taco friend extraordinaire, Mr. Esteban. How are you doing, sir?
Greetings. Really good. Super excited to be back for season 9. We were just saying before we went live, like, this is possibly my longest relationship ever. I don't know how you put up with me.
Maybe it's because we only meet up once a fortnight. No, just
I mean, I have the face and manner that only a mother could love, but to be fair, she enjoys a challenge.
She does indeed. Almost like Claire Williams, but yes.
Today's beverage, Red Bull Blue Edition.
Say that again, sorry?
Red Bull Blue Edition.
What flavour is blue?
Heidelbeer, which is blueberry for the Sassenach among you.
Hello, John Nicholson.
That's refreshing.
Welcome to the stream, John. Thanks for joining.
So, we're in a fortuitous position because while we've been between seasons on hiatus, much F1 news has happened.
All of the F1 news. Yeah, you had some points about the news. I think you wanted to share.
I know news. I know the best news. I don't have small hands. First of all, we'll do stream news.
Yes.
It's the first for us this season because this is the first time ever we're coming back to a team that we've driven for previously, which we've never done.
Yes, we were having a debate between whether it should be Force India or Toro Rosso or Williams, because those were the three that people picked out on the Twitter polls that we did. And they all kind of came out relatively equal. We thought Williams would be terrible and it would be like Caterham Kings in 2014 all over again, where we'd just be last all the year. So we flipped a coin between Force India and Toro Rosso, but it wasn't heads or tails like a normal British coin was. What was it on your coin?
No, we had a choice between embossed map of Europe and bizarre eagle design.
Thanks,
and bizarre eagle design won. So we are Force India this year.
Bit of a goodbye to them.
I like it. The coin is harsh but fair. Hello, Beetlejuice. Oh, sorry. O'Hara. Welcome to the stream.
Indeed. John's already asking, did you watch the qualif? I haven't yet, but someone has already screamed about some excellent Sauber results, so I'm moderately moist at that already.
I saw quali.
Oh, good.
Or the majority of quali.
Fab. No, I was in transport from my father's birthday lunch. So if I am extra slow here, it's just because I'm carrying extra weight.
Well then, my friend, shall we discuss how we're driving this year?
Yeah.
The format is the same as last year. Last year, obviously, we made the jump from 25% race distance to 50 with a full 3 sessions of qualification. No practice. Simulation level damage, which is always a bold call. Safety car collisions and formation laps are on. Car performance is realistic, because else what's the point? And I have set the difficulty to 90. Now, I wanted to run that by you, because we didn't have much time before we went live. But we were 85 last season, I believe.
I thought it was 80 last season.
Oh, maybe it was. Shall we go 85 then?
Let's go 85 because talking takes up 85% of my brain. And I have to say, actually, I'm running my career on 95, and at the minute I'm in the middle of Bahrain, and I'm being a little bit pummeled. So, yeah.
Bahrain really messed me up, actually, because I could not pass the qualifying pace test because there was too much wear on my tyres. But I didn't notice that at first, and so I just was going around thinking, shit, where's all the pace gone? I'm 2/10 down by the first corner. And then it came to actual qualifying, and I put it 8th, I think.
Oh, okay.
So, worry you not.
Okay.
Shall we dive in?
Yeah, let's dive in.
Kick off our 9th year together.
If we find that it's easy, at least now we can bump up the challenge between race weekends, so that's good.
Now, Also, I've already asked Simon to remember me. Beetlejuice, I got your questions. I thought they were brilliant, and I wanted to talk about them on stream. We're going to go straight into the news, and before the end of this episode, we will get to them, because I think there's a very good conversation to be had with those, mate. Balanced, hard, soft. What do I want?
I'm balancing.
Then I will balance too. Don't want any favouritism around here. Not around these parts.
You are. So,
where do we even begin?
There is so much news. So much news.
I think it's very rare that a silly season is A, so silly, and B, turns out to be true.
Yes, indeed. Oh, this is my first go into Force India. I'm loving the pink halo. I'd forgot that it would be pink on the inside too. YA.
Misses.
First policy season in. Dun.
There's a quote there already. Fortuitously, my Australia setup I was quite happy with. So I am not going to dick around with it. I'm just going to hope it translates to another car nice and cleanly. Right.
I'm going to do exactly the same because I went and played with the time trial. I appreciate it's F1 news, but very quickly, 60 seconds on the game. I went into time trial and it does that thing where it downloads someone else's setup when you're doing a rival. And I found someone else's setup that works so much better than mine. And I was like, this is comfy. So I'm using that one. So I'm just going to go for it on my screen so that you can kind of see what it is for anyone that wants setups as you go along.
I want it on the record that if he wins this round now, it's through duplicity and cowardice.
Okay.
So we're going to have to dive into the big bag of news at some point, and we're going to have to pick a topic at random because there's no obvious hierarchy of value here.
Nope.
Why don't we start with Fernando Alonso's all but inevitable retirement from Formula One, which I don't think anybody realistically thought wasn't going to happen. So, I think that's a good place to start, given how completely unsurprising it turned out to be.
Yes.
What did turn out to be surprising, though, was the selection of his replacement. Now, it's a well-known fact that you and I are among the lovers of Mr. Carlos Sainz.
Yes, we are.
It kind of caught me off guard a little bit. I mean, I know his performances at Renault of late have not exactly been anything to write home about, unless you're writing home to apologise. But it did strike me that he was such a good fit at Renault, and they seemed happy to have him, and he seemed really happy to be there. He managed to end their season on a high note last year. And they've got into this habit, Renault. They're trying to build themselves up, but they're changing drivers with pretty hardcore frequency, actually. Now, obviously, I'm not going to say Daniel Ricciardo is a bad choice, because that's obviously nonsense, but I do find myself wondering what sort of unholy machinations must have happened to have this go the way it did. What are your thoughts?
I find the whole... because you're right, Renault seemed very happy to have Carlos. And to me, that was actually one of those driver pairings that I thought, okay, that'll be safe for a couple of years. Don't bother being a Renault development driver because you ain't got nowhere to go. And now that feels like even more the case because it's like they went, oh, bigger boys. And I guess for me, it's around, was Renault snapping up a bigger boy because it became available and they just thought we have to? And that's what's pushed Carlos out. And they've kind of done the whole, Hulkenberg has been our mainstay, so therefore we're a bit more loyal to him at the moment. And he's bringing home the points, to be fair. And that's kind of why that has become a thing. It just felt a bit weird that they've put the cart before the horse almost. I don't know if it's with Renault, they have to show that they've put in a really big driver to therefore continue to get the sponsorship from Renault as a company, to say, look, we've taken on this driver, we are showing that we mean business. And maybe Carlos Sainz doesn't necessarily do that. And it's like more of a statement of intent from Renault. And that's what's caused that decision, which has then pushed Sainz to McLaren. But what was really interesting, I found, was that Sainz has been on record to say, I've been friends with Zach Brown and this has been talked about for a couple of years, almost like they had already buttered up Sainz for discount Spaniard for when Alonso, if he didn't sign for this year, if that makes sense.
See, part of me thought maybe Alonso had a hand in engineering it.
Ooh, I hadn't thought that. That's actually quite interesting.
But yeah, I mean, first of all, I'm just going to read some comments that come on that. Beetlejuice would have gone with Ricciardo and Sainz, and I completely understand why you would have said that. Have you crashed?
I had Grosjean go into the pit lane, then not go into the pit lane, and crash me out in the final corner. I'm okay. I'm just doing a 20-point turn.
Oh.
Oh, no, I'm not okay. I'm out.
Are you okay?
Oh, God damn it. Shall we restart the session?
Hi, Jabari. No, it's fine. It was just hilarious.
No, come on. We have to restart this session. Unbelievable.
I tell you what, if anyone sees what has just happened...
Right, we have to quit out, don't we, to start it again?
I think so. Hi, Jabari. Thank you.
Make sure you don't retire. Make sure you quit.
I'm trying to... Oh, I've already retired.
Okay, no, my save still says qualifying 1, so we're fine. We are fine. See, if this had happened in Q2 or 3, the rules normally are that we wouldn't restart. Yeah. But given that it's his first lap...
I tell you, it was hilarious. So, Grosjean went into the pit lane, then decided not to, and came onto the track and crashed me out in the final corner, and I was on the racetrack. That's how friggin' weird that was. That is one of the very first times that the AI has just been derp.
This is why they call it the Failcast.
Yeah, welcome to Failcast F1, anyone who's uninitiated.
Back on topic.
Yeah.
The thing is, it strikes me as a deal that's not good for either party. Because I really don't know what's in it for Sainz, really. And I don't think, while I rate Sainz very, very highly, he strikes me as a driver that needs the car rather than one that develops the car, if that sentence makes sense at all.
Yeah, he doesn't strike me yet as someone who could lead a team. And if you've got Van Dorn and or Norris in that car, they're going to be the number 2 to Sainz in theory, because Sainz is taking a step back to quote unquote develop and build with the team. But for me, he doesn't come across as someone that can do that yet because he's too erratic to do so. He's like
exactly.
If Grosjean was a Vindaloo, he's the Korma.
Can we institute a curry scale now for all driver comparisons? Because we're both fans of curry and a bit fat, and it is actually a good scale of gradation. Yeah, you're right.
I see this being a future standalone video where we just rate everyone on a curry scale.
He's a Rogan Josh with 2 Kima Nans. Now, the thing is, I wonder actually if Sainz is kind of a casualty of circumstance, because if Ricciardo wants to come, then obviously you're going to take him, and we know that Hülkenberg was on a multi-year deal already, and he was supposed to be, he was their option to lead the team initially, probably when they couldn't attract a big name.
Yeah.
So, he signed a 3-season deal, so he's on his last season next year.
Okay.
Whereas Sainz could only be signed for 1 year because of his Red Bull contractual obligations. So, maybe we'd still be talking about a Sainz-Hülkenberg lineup if Daniel had elected to stay at Red Bull.
I think we would be.
I mean, I understand as well why Beetlejuice would say, Ricciardo and Sainz, because that strikes me as the lineup with more potential longevity, right? That's the one that's going to be around a little bit longer. But God love Nico Hülkenberg. That guy deserves a podium, and he deserves it soon. And when that team eventually gets back to the top, I'd love him to have a good season in there.
Yeah. He's the long-standing whipping man of midfield teams.
The thing is, this move now makes me think I've gone from considering Carlos Sainz to a potential champion one day. I know some people will spray coffee everywhere at the thought of that, but really. To now being someone who's maybe put a noose around the neck of his own career a little bit, because I just have no faith in McLaren to get that car back up to the top.
No, I don't. And for me, that team is going to be mired in the midfield at best for the foreseeable future. And you can see signs the way he's talking. He's already saying, like, I'm in a good position for 3 or 4 years down the line. So clearly he's like, make this a long-term solution, please. So it's made it very awkward, I think. In the same way that I think Esteban Ocon will end up being a victim of all this circumstance being played out. Another driver who's doing an absolutely sterling job and will just end up with nowhere to go because of circumstance. And this is also victim of a 20-car grid and all of that kind of stuff as well, because unfortunately when the very few big players fall or they don't shuffle off their F1 mortal coil, Kimi then this is what happens. Your key talent, who should in theory be your next 5 years of F1 fun, gets stuck in that forever waiting game. And it's always been like that to an extent, but I think with a smaller grid and with teams investing so much money that they've become, with the exception of Red Bull, I would say, risk averse at the top of the table. This is the symptoms of a business F1 small grid high risk environment.
That is an incredibly astute observation. I don't find anything to particularly disagree with about that. Beetlejuice asks, would we have taken Sainz to Red Bull? I'm going to answer immediately, yes, I would have done. I would have put him back against Verstappen. I mean, I know the results are probably explosive. The two of them started out on friendly terms, but that gradually evaporated. But Sainz, for me, showed he could go toe-to-toe with Max on his day. And I think if Red Bull are going to benefit fully from their driver program, then take the Toro Rosso mentality and extend it to the main team as well. Put them in a cage and make them fight to the death. That's what Red Bull does. I balls that lap. I was going to go faster, and then I hit the bollard because you have to, and it lost my concentration.
I just had an AI go off all on its own. How good's that?
So I would have taken him. I don't think Gasly is ready, and that's not an indictment of Gasly, who I think is doing a great job. Although Hartley seems to be keeping him honest a lot more now, and I don't know if that's reflecting very well. But to me, like, Sainz likes a fire under Verstappen in the way Gasly probably doesn't. At least not initially. I'm sure once they're in the same car racing each other, Gasly's not going to take any prisoners.
I think I've bugged mine up there as well. For me, Gasly has an awful lot of weight of his shoulders for the Red Bull programme. And that's because if he does not perform and they promote him just as quickly as how they promoted Kvyat, that's 2 in a row that have promoted and buckled. And then I think Red Bull will start to think, just how young do we want our fetuses in this car anymore? Yeah. So for me, there's like a wider, if Gasly doesn't step up to the plate and prove himself, and I think he will do, but I think he'll be a bit more of a slow burn than, say, Ricciardo Verstappen, who got in and immediately cracked the whip. I don't think he'll crash and burn like Kvyat did into everyone else, but I think he'll be a bit more of a Bottas-y slow burn, get better over time. And I don't. Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off. I just don't think I don't think a driver is seasoned enough after one season to go to the main team. Then again, the main team next year is probably not going to be anywhere near what it is now.
That's a good point.
I don't know. I mean, it could turn out to be dodging a bullet for Carlos Sainz, but part of me also thinks, though, that this was something to do with Fernando Alonso. And the reason I say that is because he's putting the wind up the press a little bit by claiming Red Bull approached him, which Red Bull vehemently deny. And I wonder if, as he's on the way out, he's just, chucking a hand grenade into Red Bull for his buddy Carlos. I don't know, but the whole thing just seems odd to me. Because moving Gasly out of Toro Rosso, that gives them a seat in Toro Rosso that is going to be difficult enough already to fill, alongside potentially Hartley, who they obviously want to get rid of. The perennial butt plug, maybe plugging that orifice for another year, the way things are going. Yeah. They just need to stop burning the fingers of their drivers. Because realistically, Ricciardo should have been there another 2-3 years. But they set their stall out very, very clearly that he was, in all but name, number 2 to Max Verstappen. And if you recall, on episode 19 of our last season, I actually said that if I was Daniel Ricciardo, I would go to Renault. I didn't actually think he'd do it. If you listen, Daniel. But if honestly, if I was Daniel Ricciardo and I was making a decision about my career, that's exactly where I would have gone. Because that's a team with a proven track record of getting back to the top. He's never going to be allowed to be number 1 at Red Bull, and I think it's going to get inside his head. I think it was already starting to affect his form, his rivalry with Max, and I think sometimes shaking things up, going somewhere new, and somewhere where he's got the potential to make himself the leader and the undisputed leader. Why not do it? And particularly because Red Bull are going to go backwards before they go forwards, I feel. It could be that Ricciardo and Sainz have both dodged a bullet, and actually it's Gasly that's walking into a closed door. It's becoming very hard to read all of this. Yeah. Because, sorry, one last point. Yeah. Because, now the teams are talking about, well, we don't want to change the engine regulations for 2021. And we've been talking for months now about all these decisions being made with 2021 in mind, and suddenly there's a good chance now that these regulations are going to be binned for a little while, which means you're going to have potentially a down-on-power Honda unit still powering both Red Bull teams. You're going to have McLaren still as a customer Renault team, Aston Martin still stood on the doorstep, potentially Cosworth still stood on the doorstep as well. I'm worried now that some of these decisions have been made and the circumstances are changing. We could end up with some drivers being burned quite badly with a baked-in fence around them almost. Yeah. It's very hard to say where things are going to go. Kevin Magnussen up in 3rd, you cheeky monkey.
All the top 6 are running on super softs, and it's proper closed it down, because I'm 15th, but I'm only 7/10 off of the first person. That's how close it is, so I'm going round again. And maybe again after that.
Well, me, Vettel and Magnussen are on Ultras.
Oh, Vettel must be on Ultras.
Yeah, and I'm sat 2nd at the moment, 124.8.
Nice.
Which I pulled out of my arse because I was 7th on my lap before the accident, and I didn't feel I could go much faster than that, but apparently things have changed.
Nicely done.
The thing is now, I don't want to bore Beetlejuice, who's on my stream, because I feel like I should be out doing laps, but I don't feel I've got any incentive to do it because this gives me an extra set of Ultra Softs for qualifying. But again, it depends if I actually need them. Let's see if we can go on board with you. I love your big pink helmet.
Oh baby, I've not heard that since about 2 weeks ago, last Tuesday. Yeah. Yeah, very interesting times with this whole thing, and the longer these regulations start being bandied around of changes, this, that, and the other, the closer it's going to be to the time where things are going to be actually implemented or not implemented and banned. And then who does that actually help? That helps the big teams with the big budgets because they're the people that have got the money to react. So then you kind of think, right, well, if I'm not in a big team, I'm going to be even more boogered in a way. So it's so difficult. Oh, good, that puts me 9th. I feel safer now.
Smashing.
Only 3/10 faster.
No, I'm going to go out again just for fun. Seems the track's getting faster too, so maybe I don't want to.
Well, if it's going in real-time conditions, I guess we're now into late evening, so it kind of makes everyone go boo. Hi Ultraman, thank you for the stream, and thanks for following us on Twitter, by the way. I apologise for all of the crap that I will be tweeting, but very welcome to have you alongside. And hi Ninja as well. Sorry, I didn't spot you saying hello there.
Speaking of which, in amongst all this driver mess, I've managed to yet again pick a fight with the entirety of Poland.
Yes, discuss.
Over one Mr. Robert Kubica.
What have you done?
Well, now the rumour is that with Ocon potentially inexplicably going to McLaren for reasons that don't make any sense to me, and Stroll going in at Force India, which, don't worry, we'll talk about the name thing. To me, it would have been logical to say, okay, Williams isn't in a great place right now, but it's still a Mercedes ecosystem team. Ocon's a Mercedes development driver. If you have to have Stroll in Force India for whatever political reasons, then fine, do a straight swap. Obviously, that sucks to be Esteban Ocon, but I don't think he's going to have his reputation damaged by driving in a car that everyone acknowledges to be fundamentally uncompetitive. We already know what he's capable of. It's no biggie, right? He's not going to sign himself to the reject bin by having a half season or a season and a half in Williams. But now it seems that he may replace Stoffel van Dorn, who, let's be honest, does need replacing. And then that means Kubica is going to step up into the Williams seat, presumably just for half a season.
Yeah.
But then also some people are telling me, well, actually, George Russell may step up into the Williams seat, which to me makes about 1,000,000 times more sense. Mm-hmm. And people always get the impression that I'm sort of anti-Robert Kubica, and it really isn't the case. He was absolutely among my favourite drivers during the time of he was still with us. I rated him very highly, and I've consistently said on this show that I consider him the world champion that we never got. Circumstances robbed us of him as world champion, and I honestly believe he would have got there eventually. In fact, in the season where he had his accident, he was supposedly in contract negotiations with Ferrari.
Yeah.
Now, there's nothing to say Ferrari would have delivered a car worthy of him, and probably wouldn't have done, but you know, that's still the circles within which he was being spoken. I've messed up my lap thanks to being scared of Charles Leclerc. Anyway.
Yes, we're riding on board, actually.
He just won't get out of my way. I was hoping he would go into the pits, but he won't. I just don't see why you would put Robert Kubica into that seat, right? He's not going to be able to develop that car out of the hole that it's in.
Nope.
It's only going to do damage to his legacy. He's not a good long or medium-term option because he's at, by anyone's estimation, the tail end of an F1 career. I mean, obviously there are outliers like Nando Jensen, Rubens Barrichello, and Kimi Räikkönen, but generally most drivers are out of the sport by 35. He's 33 now, and he's recovering from a life-changing injury.
Oh, is that
Two
all he
teams
is?
tested him.
I thought he was older.
Yeah, I believe he's 33.
Oh.
Could be wrong. In my mind, I thought he was 35 as well, but apparently he's 33. But he's recovering from a life-changing injury, and two teams have tested him, and both have found him lacking. Williams took Sergei Sorokin. Now, you may say, well, they took Sorokin for the money, and I'm sure the money didn't hurt. But Alan Permain from Renault recommended Sorokin get that seat as well, and obviously Sorokin was who Kubica was up against in the Renault shootout. And it sounded very much to me that had Carlos Sainz not become available, it would have been Sorokin teaming with Nico Hülkenberg at Renault.
Yeah.
And that says everything, as far as I'm concerned. I think at that point the argument is over. However, many others disagree. I just don't know why you would do it, because it's not like Kubica comes back with a whole lot of money. You'd probably get some public goodwill out of it, but I mean, he's not going to cover himself in glory, and he's not going to cover the team in glory, because the car's just trash. Nobody wins. Nobody wins, and that's why I don't think it's going to happen. But apparently there are several in games media, F1 media, who believe that this is actually what's going to come to pass. I would be surprised, because I always saw Kubica as, and again, I don't want this to sound like I'm being disrespectful of Kubica. I think it's just the way Williams is. I saw him in the same way I saw Susie Wolff, almost as like a touch of tokenism. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Because there was no way Susie Wolff was ever going to get a racing seat. And we saw that play out, because there was a chance to put her in the car, and then they stuck in Paul di Resta instead. I very much thought the same thing about Robert Kubica. I thought there's no way he's going to get a seat. He's there because they want the good public relations from having him signed to the team, but they don't consider him a serious team member. And you know, I could be wrong, but I don't know. Something about it doesn't sit right with me. And as much as I think Robert wants it, I think he deserves better. And I kind of worry that he's wasting time here when he could actually be driving in a different series very successfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I completely agree. Just to quickly touch on, just for a couple of people that joined us yesterday and are confused why we're in Force India today, this is a fortnightly podcast for Formula One news only, where we only talk that. Everything else that we do that's F1 related is normally just on our careers, which are completely separate playthroughs. So just to kind of clarify that. So this is every fortnight on 4 o'clock UK time. So yes, pop it in your diaries and come and join us, and we'll chat all things F1 and have opinions like that spark wildfire on Twitter. Because all of Poland now basically hates you, don't they? But it's the kind of things that you see, and I hate because this makes us sound like we're being a bit snobby. But when you look at the F1 YouTube comments under videos, particularly on like the Williams YouTube channel, where people have gone to the point of actually subscribing to Williams' YouTube channel just to post Kubica comments, but have no particular understanding of the fact that whoever's in that car will be last anyway. Because they don't understand that they've not even taken the time to understand that all works and goes horribly wrong. So, yeah, I completely agree. I don't think... There's also sort of part of me that kind of sits there and thinks, Kubica's one of those people who I would have thought would rather not drive at the back of the field and continue to test until a better option comes along as well. But that's just maybe what I was gleaning from him from the massive F1 podcast that they done from him, because he does all kinds of weird and wonderful things, and the way how he talks about Formula One and racing in general, he gets the thrill out of the winning and being able to do things that you're not supposed to be able to do. And I think he feels like he's already vindicated himself with what he's been able to do already. So I don't see him accepting that.
That's the other thing that people don't infer from my comments, but I'm immensely impressed with what he's done already. I don't think he needs to qualify 20th for the rest of the season to prove any further point.
No. So yeah, I'd be very interested. There's so many other more people I'd want to see in that car as well, because that's Williams
the other
seat.
Thing. It's a bottleneck for talent.
Yeah, that Williams seat has the potential. If they placed George Russell in it, that would be superb. I could also see potentially. Who was
Alex
the other?
Wynn?
Ooh, maybe. I think he's more of an outside.
He's a Williams development driver, isn't he?
He is, but he's now gone off to do WEC and stuff like that. So I think he's lost to the wilderness of stuff like that.
That's usually what happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
Once you're out of open wheel cars, then your Formula One career is dead.
And he's not set the world alight in Formula E either.
In before Simon suggests Markelov. You and your love of Markelov.
But again, an all-Russian lineup at Williams, that would make me lol. Because now that Force India / Racing Point / everything else is now going to basically be Stroll and someone else, that closes the door for George Russell, who basically had that seat for whenever Perez and Ocon were going to go.
Yeah.
So Williams is now his best option. The only other thing I could think of, and would be if there's a bottleneck and they stuck Lando Norris in at Williams, but again that makes as much sense for me as them sticking him in Toro Rosso, which is what loads of people keep on suggesting as well. But
yeah, which is mental, because McLaren have already categorically stated they will not loan him out. But they've also made comments about they don't believe the team's in a place right now worthy of his talent, which sounds like they're going to overlook him for another year. And I keep thinking, like, you've got to pull the trigger on him because otherwise someone else will. And he's under contract for McLaren now, and he can't drive for someone else until they okay it. But that contract isn't for perpetuity.
No. And there's something for me about them being quite humble, because Lando Norris, yes, he's fast, but my goodness, he's also had some absolutely shocking races too. And George Russell, although I know we've discussed this before, George Russell is less sellable because he's squeaky clean bum cheeks of a guy. But I've completely buggered this lap up. I'm going to.
Your mum would like him. He has nice hair.
Yeah, exactly. He might be able to sell 1 million records as like that boy in the back of the boy band that everyone just kind of goes, oh yeah, he existed. My problem is that he is much more consistent and reliable than Norris is at the moment, even when you take into account the fact that Norris does seem to have a car that likes to brake quite often. And I think he needs more development before he can actually be worthy of a McLaren seat as well. Personally, my opinion. I know I'm very much in the minority of that, though.
Yeah, but I mean, given where McLaren is right now, don't you think that's like saying he needs to work a bit more to be worthy of a kick in the bollocks?
Yeah. I do, actually. But to me, that is then a... especially because he works so much in the factory trying to make that car better. Not really working, is it, Norris?
No, it's not. Shall we move on?
Yeah.
Because we'll stay on the silly season, but there's a piece of news that has gone somewhat under the radar, and I wanted to talk to you about it because I think it will make both of us a little bit happy. So, apparently, one Mr. Jean-Eric Verne, current Formula E World Champion, has received an offer from a Formula One team for next season.
Oh, wow. I wonder who.
Well, apparently he's at this weekend's Belgian Grand Prix as the guest of a team, and I want to find out who that team is because Brundle just said he was there, didn't say who'd invited him, but he has gone public to say that he has been offered a contract for next season.
Oh, wow.
And now I'm sat here thinking, who on earth could that be?
We're expecting rain in around 10 to 15 minutes.
That is mystical. It couldn't be Toro Rosso. It couldn't be. That would just be going. That is going back to the ex that you know is fucking crazy, but you've done it anyway.
It could be, actually. Now you say it, that's the only team that actually makes any sense. I mean, because apparently now Leclerc is going to Haas, which doesn't make a huge amount of sense for me either.
No, I'd rather he stay with Sauber at the minute, the way they're going.
Exactly. And then Giovinazzi goes into Sauber to replace him. So really, you're talking Toro Rosso is the one with the most fluid lineup.
Although
everyone else is.
To be fair, I could see Verne in a Williams. Stoic.
He was
serious.
Very bitter about his sudden exit, and so are we actually, because Simon and I have long criticised Red Bull's junior program, for taking excellent drivers, putting them against each other, and then arbitrarily throwing one or both away. Because it usually is arbitrary as well, and it's not like Ricciardo blew away the.
No.
They were fairly closely matched, and then you get cases where you've got Buemi and Alguersuari, again, two excellent drivers. They couldn't figure out who was best, so they fired them both. And
see, now I'd also heard that Buemi is attending some Formula One races as well. All of a sudden, and could Buemi be coming
10
back?
minutes.
I heard that.
I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this opportunity while I'm not out on track. Let me put some racing on the screen for people. I will try and find Jean-Luc Vergne's statement.
Okay. Well,
Let's watch. It does look like it's going to rain, doesn't it?
Ultraman has also put in Leclerc moving to Haas ? Yes, apparently that is the way up the Ferrari chain. Is that because they're the next best team, quote unquote, with Ferrari engines? Stick him in there, and Ferrari pay Haas, and then that brings Haas closer to the Ferrari family, doesn't it? So that kind of there's logic, but we don't necessarily like said logic. I'd rather he stay where he is. But then there's nowhere for Giovinazzi and or whoever else they want to stick in from the Ferrari development programme, of which there's actually quite a few decent Ferrari development people around. It's Red Bull that have got the massive gap in their programme. Although it's I'm bouncing around a bit, but it's getting really, really frustrating how the Formula 3 people and now Super Formula people just keep on shouting Dan Ticktum at everything, even when he's like down in 12th place, and he's done a superb job from getting from 15th to 12th. I'm thinking it feels like they're being paid by Red Bull to shout about how amazing he is when there's 11 people in front of him in the race.
Very true. Very true. So I've just read a few pieces on this very quickly. None of them mention the team. And his exact words were he was contacted by a Formula One team to ask if he had a contract in place for next season. Ooh. So no one's tabled an offer, but they have contacted him of their own volition. So really we need to find out which team he's with this weekend, because that would be a good indicator. His comments, though, do say that he's not bitter towards Red Bull or Ricciardo, so I do wonder if it's Toro Rosso. Because, I mean, they do seem a bit lost, don't they, about who's actually going to take that seat.
Yeah.
I mean, because none of the other real prospects have a super license.
No, everyone's pointing to Dan Ticktum, and that's why he's now suddenly in Super Formula to try and start wheeling up some of his points. But he won't have amassed the points, I think, this year anyway, regardless of what he's done, because he's had the time out for the punch up in the pit lane or whatever it was that he had. I can't remember now. I might be confusing him with Nikita Mazepin. But yeah, it's they are stuck, and then they've got like no one underneath him either. There's a couple of Red Bull levered cars in other places, but it's right down the very bottom of the chain. So this isn't going to be a 1 year problem. This potentially could be a 2 or 3 year like gap where they're going to have to think of remember me, your old friend, going through the contact list seeing who they can find along the way. Lost your number.
Maybe Buemi's with them as well. I mean, but then that would seem even more bizarre to me, because surely you'd put Verne in Red Bull to give Gasly another year to mature. I mean, I know Verne's been out of Formula 1 now for 4 seasons, but he's the Formula E World Champion. He has driven open wheel consistently ever since. I believe he's tested some Formula 1 cars.
Didn't he also go to be Ferrari tester? So what Ferrari teams?
Yes, he was a tester for Ferrari, yes.
I wonder what Ferrari teams he was about that could also have a place for him. I don't know how strong that is, that connection.
The mystery thickens. I mean, I think this is the first time we've had a silly season where we don't really have any predictions we're really confident making.
No.
Because normally we're quite good at predicting this kind of stuff, but here it's really hard to tell. I mean, for me, putting Leclerc in the Haas doesn't make any sense. But apparently that could happen. And Like, I have no idea why they keep signing Raikkonen. It's not that he's doing badly or anything. It's just I have no faith in him to attack drivers when he's overtaken, and he just doesn't seem to have the appetite consistently. And you've got all these hungry young drivers behind him, dying to get in there. And yeah, Leclerc is way too young really for a Ferrari drive, but I think he's proven himself as good an option as any. And while maybe I wouldn't promote Leclerc to Ferrari just yet, I certainly wouldn't retain Raikkonen.
No.
If I was Ferrari, I would have taken Perez during all this drama at Force India.
Yes.
He's signing a new contract now, apparently, but...
And he's kind of tied to that team now that he's saved it, I think. It would be weird to save the team in all of those jobs and then be like, ah! Although it would say, like, it would show what an amazing person I guess he is to some degree, because he's gone out of his way to save all of those people's lives, essentially, and livelihoods, and then gone. But to me, that kind of makes that his spiritual home, and Perez is now home for Force India for the foreseeable.
Well, I mean, Force India always was his spiritual home, wasn't it, really? I mean,
yeah.
That's the team that took him back after he left, and they've always had a very positive relationship. But I mean, you know, as much as they've had his back, I think this is just him having their back in return. I think they genuinely have a fondness for him, and he has a fondness for them, and that's good. But I would personally put him in the Ferrari if it had been my call.
Yeah.
And keep him there until Vettel's done being Vettel.
And I think it's Vettel that's actually probably the saving grace for Raikkonen, because he knows that there's a dependable number two. He's there or thereabouts, but he's not going to threaten. And he knows his place.
That's exactly the same point Beetlejuice has just made, and I agree with both of you. It's really sad. I'm longing for the day Ferrari stops running as a one-car team. But we've said this many times before, they just don't care about the Constructors' Championship. They get money just for being Ferrari, and there's no prestige and glamour really around the Constructors' Championship, so they've never really cared about it that much. They're quite happy to throw away, compromise heavily even the performance of one of their cars to favour the other, even if ultimately it means less points for them as a team. And I've never understood that attitude. You know, leaving Kimi Raikkonen out on old tyres for 1 billion years. I just don't... that's why I can't be a Ferrari fan. I want to love them, but I can't, because they're bad at being a Formula One team. Speaking of being bad at being a Formula One team, let's hop back to McLaren really quickly. Oh, I only just scraped through there. Stoffel van Dorn, yet again, qualified absolute dead stone cold last. I don't know if you want me to spoil qualifying for you, Simon, or not, but...
Yeah, I'll be watching it later anyway, but go for it.
But suffice it to say, absolutely shocking. Now, it's not like Fernando did a much better job either. I mean, he put it 17th, I think, so it was a bad weekend all round for the car, and I mean, it wasn't a great result for anybody in the team, but if I was driving for my career, I wouldn't be especially happy with that showing. As I pointed in my review from Hockenheim, you could put a yogurt in that car, and the yogurt would also qualify last, and the yogurt only costs 40 pence. I agree, Beetlejuice. His performances are not good enough for Formula One. Now, there are people who say, well, his junior Formula record shows that he is, and he just needs a clean break, much like you and I, Simon, said about Daniel Kvyat. That, you know, put him in a Williams and maybe you can rehabilitate him, but yeah, it doesn't make sense to keep him in the seat. And then the question becomes, well, if Ocon is an option, as little sense as it makes, maybe you do stick Ocon in there. Just the whole thing is turning on its head. You know, McLaren as a customer team, from Renault of all people, and It's becoming very hard to do a Formula One podcast today because none of the news makes sense.
No, it is like an alternative fake world. I've gone out on dries even though it's starting to rain.
How does it feel?
I'm just leaving the garage, but it didn't tell me to not do dries, which means to me that there's enough time to do it. 'Cause you know when it comes up and it says this tyre, there's a weather change, this will affect the tyre. It will stop you if it thinks that that's a bad move. But I'm going to go around as quick as I can on the outlap.
I really should have gone out immediately, but I didn't. I was dicking around, scratching my nose.
Excellent. For
me, it's a fair point, Beetlejuice, because Lance Stroll has a good junior record as well, and that's hardly converted into success.
No, and it never normally does. I think what was really key for me, and admittedly it was a bit of an awkward session, was FP1. McLaren basically put Norris in the car alongside Stoffel and was like, go on then, best man wins. Now Norris, I think, was slower by the end, I can't remember, but for most of the session he was faster because Stoffel spent most of it in the garage with a brake problem and then something else. But there was a point where they were on the same hundredth of a second for a lot of that session, and I kind of thought, that's his first time. Well, it's not the first time in the car, but it's the first time in anger in practice, and he's matching him already. So you kind of then start to think, oh, Stoffel. And it's a shame because I quite like the guy. I always thought he would be a slow burn, but my God, you need to turn up the heat in that kitchen at some point, Stoffel, because at the moment you're doing salad, and that's not good enough.
Salad? He's doing fucking toaster pockets. I keep saying he's the human equivalent of a sigh. He's got zero charisma. He is kind of likable in a very beige, benign, everyone likes blueberry muffins kind of way, but he's just done nothing to impress me at all. I was criticising him last season, if you remember, for being forgettable. I've always said the worst thing you can be, I mean, even worse than just being bad or crashing a lot, the worst thing you can be is completely anonymous. Because if you manage to be boring when you're driving at 240 kilometres an hour, then there is no rehabilitating you. He is Belgian. He is that, Beetlejuice, he is that. And it's not like I didn't want him to do well, and I went through a phase in the last 2 years of being quite fond of McLaren because I kind of was rooting for them a little bit, but because you and I have always been fans of the underdog, right, Simon? We like the ones that try, and maybe they fail, but they're trying, and God bless them. But
we love our backmarkers.
But with McLaren, it got to the point where I lost sympathy. Like now, I just don't have the affection I once had for them, and I know some people will say, well, that makes you a fair weather fan, and maybe that's a fair criticism, but it's the same reason that, you know, half my family's English, half my family's Scottish, and I've always followed the Scottish football team. And the reason for that is that they're both rubbish, but Scotland know they're rubbish. I mean, I know England did really well last time, but for most of my life, England have been rubbish. And, you know, you have two teams that are maybe not 100% comparable on talent or results, but neither of them are going to win. And you've got one where every corner kick is treated like a victory, and another that promises everything in the world and then fluffs it in the quarterfinals. And it's so much easier to be fond of the one that knows they're rubbish but gives it a shot anyway than the ones who have an overinflated idea of themselves. And I definitely put McLaren in that camp. And I think Williams were in that camp for a long time as well, through the early 2000s, because I don't think Williams realised the trouble they were in when it started. And it all started with, I'll give you one word, mechachrome.
Yes. That was the beginning of the end. I mean, they kind of saved themselves with the BMW stuff for a little while. But yeah, that whole we're a customer, we're Renault, but we're not really Renault, was the beginning of losing it. And it was what lost it for Benetton, which is why they then became Renault.
And that's why I'm worried about McLaren, right? Because very few teams survive going from works to a customer and maintain any level of competitiveness. And the thing is, like, everyone always points to Red Bull and Braun here. Tell me I'm wrong, but first of all, Red Bull were a de facto works team for Renault, because when they were winning championships, for most of that time, Renault weren't even on the grid. And Braun was a privateer customer team in the loosest sense of the word. They were a privateer customer team in the same way Danny LaRue was a woman. Like, in some sense, yes, but in another sense, no. Because that car was... Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, on that point, just whilst it's in my brain, I watched a live stream on the Formula One Voice forum thing.com. You know, that website where you can vote and stuff. And it was a live podcast with Ross Brawn, and he talked in great detail about, because it was all about how to attract new teams and stuff like that was a topic for him. And he talked about how much money actually Honda basically bankrolled that team for 2 years, for 18 months, sorry, which was why he never planned to have a 2010 car or anything like that at all, because it was basically we've got 1 year to do really well and sell and get out. And I didn't realise just how much how much Braun owed to Honda in terms of finance, not just setup and everything else.
Yeah, well, that's that's exactly the point I was making. It was a works Honda chassis, and it had the best powertrain on the grid at the time. But that success was a byproduct of being a Honda Works team. I mean, yeah, they changed the name over the door, but it was a technicality.
Yeah.
Beetlejuice says McLaren is not the same McLaren anymore. The new American DNA does not align with the Big Ron DNA. I agree. The thing is, though, I've got a bit of fondness for Zak Brown, and much like any other self-respecting Brit, I mean, it's difficult enough to deal with McLaren being foreign-owned, but having an American at the helm of McLaren did sort of unsettle the stomach a little bit. But actually, I've grown quite fond of Zak, and I think he's as capable as anybody of solving the problem. Yeah. I don't know how much inertia he's up against from the board.
That's a good point.
And I don't know how much true executive power he actually has. Where are you, Meal China?
I am last because I had a proper wiggle at turn 5 on my hot lap. Hello, Julian. Welcome. Ultraman says both of you have the same voice and it makes it confusing. I don't think we do. One of us is from Essex. One of us is Northern. But I should try and distinguish myself where possible.
Yeah, turn the Southern up a bit more, and I'll turn the Northern up.
All right, mate.
And
easy geez.
App and it'll be read.
Fucking having it.
Right. So we've kind of talked now about the driver carousel for the most part.
Yes.
Where on earth do we go from here? Because there's so much to cover. So much to cover. I mean, we've got qualifying to talk about. We've got the whole situation with Force India. We've got the debacle around the 2021 regulations. We have got the basically every piece of news that's happened for the last month. So there is plenty to discuss.
Should we do Force India whilst we are in Force Indias?
Yeah, well, actually, that's part of the reason why we added them to the pool, right? Why
Yes.
we considered coming back to them, because we thought we were going to see the last of them potentially.
Yeah, say goodbye. And I guess we are in all kinds of words. Firstly, I'm really pleased because I know of at least one person, if not two, that work at Force India. So I'm delighted that they have their jobs still, and that they are still alive and well. So yes, if you, the social media guy for Force India is a very good friend of mine. So well done, Will. I'm glad you're alive and well, and tweeting and being passive aggressive towards other teams, which he loves to do. So yeah, great for that. And firstly, can we discuss Racing Point as a name?
Yeah, I can't begin to fathom where the hell that name came from, because it's awful.
Me no fan either. Especially because it's still got Force India tied on the end. So then what the hell is that actually called? Racing Point 0. Oh, I like that.
No, it's the full name is Racing Point Force India, but I suspect it's a temporary name because if you remember 2010 when Peter Sauber bought back his team from BMW, it was still called BMW Sauber Ferrari the next year because technicalities around the Concorde Agreement, and I think they've had to retain the name Force India because they still want to make a case that they're entitled to some conditions or payout under the Concorde Agreement. I imagine they're not going to get it, and it looks like they've waived it, but they've probably already signed the paperwork. I imagine from next season they'll just be called Racing Point, which is still a fucking awful name that I hate. Because originally the name was going to be Stroll Racing Group, which I didn't like either. I guess it was probably going to be called SRG or something.
Yeah. I don't mind SRG.
Presumably, I actually have a theory on this. I think they... there we go. According to Will Buxton, the teams have agreed to the team getting the payout. Okay, so then that is it then. Okay. I actually think... I understand why it struck you as weird, but actually I think this is big Ross Brawn leveraging some power here because I think it was in nobody's best interests long term to deny Force India that payout. I know the teams that were objecting were thinking, well, it increases their payouts, but it's a one-year return, and you potentially would have lost another team from the grid, and we could ill afford that happening. So I imagine those teams are getting some concession. Oh, refreshing beverage.
Oh, you were better
I imagine
the
they're
rest.
getting some concession somewhere else. Yeah, I'm quite... Well, I'm not going to say I'm pleased with that, because I could have gone faster, I think. I think I could have closed that 2/10 gap to Danny Rick.
Oh, you done inters at the end?
I put on inters, but didn't leave.
Okay.
Because I wasn't enough time to do a fast lap, but I thought, well, I haven't driven much in the wet, and I haven't driven at all on inters, so I thought maybe it's a good chance to get my eye in case it's a wet race, but who knows?
Aww. Good eye.
So really, for me, I'm just glad that the team's still on the grid. I hope they reconsider the name, and the internet is alight with people telling them the name is awful, and Jenny Gao even said that's a horrible name. I noticed that on TV, people are still just calling them Force India, and I don't know if that's force of habit or if they just refuse to say Racing Point, but I just can't imagine sitting in a meeting where someone suggests that name and nobody slaps them out of their chair.
Ultraman's popped into the two things on this. The first one I thought was hilarious. Racing Point Force India has turned into 0 Point Force India. Which I could quite like. And then possible names: Force India, 1 Stroll F1 Racing Team, 2 Force Canada, 3 Canadian Force, and 4 Canadian Racing Point Team. I don't know if they are the real things that they put in, but that's kind of what he said that were on the table. I suppose Force Canada, where's your next Canadian race driver coming from? I don't know.
Yeah. To be honest, part of me also thinks that the name change at the last minute, because it was supposed to be Stroll Racing Group, I think some people have spoken to them and said, look, you're already getting a bad reputation by buying the team, potentially for your son.
Yeah.
You don't really want to be stoking that fire, and I imagine he was probably advised not to put his name on the door, and I think that's wise, but they could have advised him a little bit further and said that name is shit, change it immediately. Because I don't know why nobody said that. Someone should have kicked whoever suggested that out of the team downstairs, get rid of them completely, and there's a million better names out there. None of the obvious choices are good, but I mean, what's the name of his investment group? Surely that's got a normal name.
That's a good point, actually.
He owns a holding company. What's his holding company called? Bear with me. We're almost there. Oh, I didn't know this. The family name isn't really Stroll. It's Strulovich.
Oh, that sounds like a pudding.
And they changed the name to Stroll, I guess. And he's married to a Belgian. Very weird. Come on, what's the name of his company? Ah, fuck it, who cares? But there is a holding company that he owns. What strategy are you taking, mate? Because I'm tempted to go for the two-stop.
I'm quite tempted to go for the two-stop. I'm going to start off with the one, but I may convert. I think it depends on how my tyre wear goes long term. Also, I know this is talking game-wise. In my Bahrain practice sessions, my DRS kept on getting stuck open every time I went out. And they kept on coming back in again and going, sorry, you have to come in and fix it. But I didn't notice, and I thought I can keep driving around, and I dropped it on the double right-hander, and I was like, ooh. But it was a nice new failure for me, and I was really excited. But yeah, I was like, oh, now I'm starting to be slightly scared about DRS zones because it was triggered by my DRS opening whenever I'd done it. So if I didn't use DRS, it would have never have failed.
Always the way. Right, we are going to start the race in just a moment, but
yes.
So we don't have to tack it on at the end as an interlude between this and the next piece of news.
Okay.
I want to put to you the great questions I got from Beetlejuice, and we can talk about them through the formation lap and so on, right?
Okay.
It was quite a long message, which I appreciate, but we'll keep it brief.
Okay.
First of all, the 1998 season, Häkkinen's first championship year, he finished the season with 100 points to Schumacher's 86. However, his argument is that the impact really came from David Coulthard, particularly the wet race in Belgium, where he lifted off on the racing line and Schumacher went into the back of him and then nearly killed him in the pit lane.
Oh my God! Murray. Sorry.
It was a big accident, though, wasn't it? It
yes.
really was. Really, do you think that Häkkinen's season is viewed through a lens of nostalgia? And can we really put him in the same class that contains people like Schumacher and Senna, given without the help of his teammate, that championship probably may have gone the other way? In fact, if it weren't for two incidents Coulthard was directly involved with, they would have finished the season, or come close to the end of the season, with equal points. The second one was... how would Jacques Villeneuve be ranked if he had the career trajectory of, let's say, Jenson Button or Häkkinen, as in winning later in his career rather than early? The kind of moves Villeneuve put on Schumacher, brackets, Estoril outside overtake, or the famous Jerez drive, were as ballsy as any I have ever seen, and are rarely mentioned. I think Villeneuve was a preface for Alonso in terms of bad career decisions, but I do think he is not rated high enough, given the talent he has displayed in F1 and various other series. I'm going to start with the second point you made there, because I don't really have any argument for that. And it does seem he was... should I start the formation lap, by the way?
Yes.
It does strike me that he probably did peak too soon, as it were. And while I respected at the time his move to BAR, I do think you're right that ultimately it caused him to be somewhat looked down on. And I think a lot of people credit his championships to the fact the car was so good. And obviously the car is always a huge factor when a driver wins a championship. But I agree completely. I think Villeneuve gets something of a bad rep. Although I don't think he did himself any favours either, because he seems to be quite hard to work with. And I think BAR gave him a huge budget and a lot of manpower behind him, and I don't think he ever really seemed that grateful for it. I think the frustration built quite early, but there were some stellar drives later in his career, and I don't know why he's so derided now. I mean, I like to think he gets a lot of stick today, mostly for his opinions, because he's a bit of a loudmouth, but
I think I was just about to say it's his opinions and loudmouthing that deride him of the talent, because people are quick to jump on that rather than what he did well in the sport. I think that he's massively underrated now, but when was the last time, apart from maybe you could argue Takuma Sato, that an F1 team was built entirely for one racing driver to continue their career? Because that's what BAR was brought together to do, was to basically get Villeneuve out of Williams, because he wanted to leave, and that was really, really fascinating.
Now we have Stroll Point Racing Force, Banana, Canada,
yeah, that's
India,
true. That is true. Good shout.
Which has been bought to continue one guy's career. Yeah, it's true. But I guess that kind of shows how highly rated Villeneuve was, right? I mean, I know the team was founded and run basically by his bestest best bud.
We're talking about Villeneuve, ultimate gainer Jacques Villeneuve, 1997 world champion.
But I mean, it's a good point. Then again, how did he do 98? Because as I recall, didn't Frentzen?
No, Williams. He was still at Williams there.
98.
He did, but I found it really interesting listening to Jacques Villeneuve's podcast. I'm going to be quiet whilst this goes on. And get off the line. Alonso. I thought Alonso had stalled then, but you haven't.
I thought you could be very right, Beetlejuice. I could be totally wrong. But I thought it was 97 where Frentzen just couldn't get himself together.
Yeah, he couldn't.
Maybe it was 98.
No, it was 97 where he was absolutely torrid. I'm coming down. I've missed you. Thank God for that. You stay ahead. Oh, no,
brake early when following. I've just reminded myself of that with a brown trousers moment behind Ricciardo. I'm trying to leave the first lap with my front wing intact, so I'm not making any dive bomb overtake attempts.
Well, there, the AI is. Oh! I had to brake on the straight to avoid you.
Just sandwiched me against the barrier. Did you see that?
Yes, because you sandwiched me. I nearly smashed into the back of you, and now I've hit Raikkonen and damaged my front wing slightly.
Oh shit! I'm sorry, mate. I have nowhere to go.
No, it wasn't you. It wasn't you. It was me on Raikkonen doing a dodgy move. But that might end up. Oh no!
No!
Are you out? Have you got?
Yes, I am.
Do you want to restart? Restart.
Yeah. First lap rule. You'll have to quit.
I've quitted, but we did watch you go off in style because I was the next car behind.
That's so embarrassing. I felt it coming as well. It wouldn't be a Failcaster without some failure.
We needed failure. We haven't failed hard enough.
You did it in qualifying. Yeah. I did it in race.
If anyone watches our podcasts and you are of the age where you have access to alcohol, generally it's advised to have a shot every time one of us fucks something up.
The race has finished on my save. I'm trying to quit out, but it won't let me. I'm worried now we may have lost a round.
Oh, not again.
And we may have failed to fail again. Also, there's a heart on the podium. Back out, abort. Right, you have to invite me back.
Right, bear with me a second. Because I'm trying to... Right, online championship, select, enter the name of this session. At least one character. Failcast?
No. Now it won't let me quit out. Oh, hold on. Yes, it will. Now it will. Now we're fine. Okay, so now I have to invite you back.
Did that work? Because I'm still showing as a save from 10 minutes ago, so I'm okay.
Let's see. Yes, you have to invite me.
Okay.
Because now it's telling me we're in Bahrain. God damn it. I'm sorry, everyone. Where's my invitation?
It's coming. Sorry, it made, because it was an autosave, it was making me name the actual thing first. Incoming. There we go.
I hope this works.
We've got a couple of questions in from this side. Just to finish off on the Villeneuve stuff, I agree that he done really well early on. I thought he'd done very well by BAR. The big thing for me was that in his podcast, he was talking about how he got emotionally involved with BAR, and that stopped him from being able to make decisions on the board when Dave Richards came in and could see things to do to make that team better. But Villeneuve sided with the people who put the project together, was rather than going for the people that could actually make the better work. And that's why he got forced out of his own team, because he chose the wrong side, essentially. And he was saying it was the first time where I thought of my heart and not my head, because beforehand I always done what I wanted and I didn't concentrate on everyone else's opinions. And that's the first time he started listening to other people's opinions and being tugged by his heartstrings. And it was the wrong business move to make. So he doesn't feel bitter necessarily about being pushed out because he'd made the wrong decisions, and he'd done it emotionally rather than business sense. And that was quite interesting to hear him talk about that. So yeah, essentially Craig Pollock he thought of was a father figure. So when Dave Richards came in and said Craig Pollock's being crap, get rid, he couldn't do it.
Dave Richards I feel sorry for, because to me he's been someone who's been brought into teams and then constantly brought up against barriers, because he had the same problem at Benetton.
Yeah.
As I recall, and he was at Ligier for a bit, right? And it was the same problem there. But going, as we've rounded that out, talking about Häkkinen, the first question.
Yes.
I don't know. I still really rate Häkkinen. I take the point, because he did have arguably the most loyal number 2 in history in terms of DC
Daddy.
And his massive chin. But by the same measure, he did everything that he had to do, and the rest you could argue is circumstance. Because I wouldn't say that DC caused that accident in Belgium on purpose. He just so happened to be there, and maybe if he had a different teammate, he would have been driving differently, and all manner of things would have been different. But I tend to think that every champion is deserving.
Yeah. Because you have to,
even if the circumstances are favourable to them. People always criticise Nico Rosberg, but I always say, well, he won the championship in the longest season in F1 history, so arguably he had to do more to win it. And yes, he got lucky with Hamilton's engine exploding, but I don't think that takes anything away from his performances, because reliability has always been a factor. And so I'm inclined to make the same argument for Häkkinen. Whether Häkkinen's truly one of the greats of the sport is kind of harder to say, because he retired way before his time, in my opinion.
But I also think that he knew when to retire, because he's one of those drivers that I think, one, achieved his dream and then was like, I don't think this is for me anymore. And there's a bit like Damon Hill in a way, who done what they needed to do and then kind of had this like, I'm done now mentality, and that was knew when to go. Arguably for Damon could have went at the end of 98 and that would have been better, but that then makes it really difficult to build up a legacy, because they peak and then go immediately, and then you kind of think, right, well, it's really difficult to understand how you can sustain a legacy when you don't have a legacy to sustain.
Do you know, now we're doing manual starts, I get much better starts than I did with auto starting. Let's keep it clean.
Sorry, I was busy punting Magnussen, but I'm okay.
Right, this time, Ben, don't bin it. How about that? How about that as a strategy? I feel like I'm on the wrong tyres, and just because I could get through on super soft doesn't mean it was the right thing to do.
Oh, you're super soft?
Yeah.
Wow. There is so much going on just ahead of you. There is so much going on just ahead of you.
Yeah, I know. I hate it. That was brown trousers time.
Ooh, Ricardo just put me in the wall, but I'm okay.
Alright, let's be a bit more gentle.
How is Hamilton 6th?
He's been really bad in this game for me. He's not had a good race yet in any of my races. I carried on with my career mode. I'm alternating rounds for live streaming because I actually want to get through my career. And sometimes I want to play the game, but I don't want to live stream. And he's been having a shocking season. Speaking of shocking, I think I need to let him by because he is faster than me. Just tuck in behind him there. Oh God, it's you!
Hello! Hello!
No! You know this never ends well. Can't you have the common courtesy to be 10th or something?
My problem is that I've got Ricardo diving down me outside as well, so I have to push you because you are faster than me, but you're at a slower tyre, which is why we're together. But I actually think you probably have the pace to stay ahead of me on your tyre. I've not gelled with this Melbourne circuit in the slightest this year round.
So now things are slowly starting to calm down again. You said you had some questions on your side, and then we can get back into the news. Or should we
what do we think?
come back to the questions when you can read?
Yeah, it was from Ultimate Gamer was saying, what do we think about? Do we think Red Bull is now going to start a McLaren-like trajectory?
That is an excellent question. Because it could really go either way, couldn't it? Part of me says no because well, they have two teams first of all under their direct control, and they announced today actually they are sharing technology for 2019 because it's no longer explicitly banned. And I think that will help them develop. Plus, Honda haven't turned off the money tap, although they're not injecting money directly into Red Bull in the way they were injecting it into McLaren. They are very well funding the development of the engine, is what I've been reading, and they're throwing a lot of money into this project, probably because they're very grateful Red Bull took the risk on them.
Mm-hmm.
I think long term this is a partnership that could actually yield some very good results. I just don't think it will be immediate, and I think McLaren may come to rue the day, if they don't already, that they tried to lay the blame for all their ills at Honda's door and decided in a moment of panic to become a Renault customer team.
I also think it's down to the way how they work together as well, in that how much autonomy Honda actually have compared to the autonomy that they were given, I think, by McLaren.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, I think Red Bull have shown they're far more willing to offer Honda a level of flexibility that allows them to develop their way out of problems. Because, you know, we saw that with pre-season testing, right, where historically McLaren and Honda had very rough pre-season testing with a lot of failures and problems and embarrassments, and then Toro Rosso got the most laps of anybody for the first day, I believe, or for most of the day. Ooh, scary corner.
Yes, you can, by the way, Ultraman. The character AI hand movements don't matter about you changing gears. He's saying, like, when you raise your hand in the game and you're having an argument with someone, does that mean that it doesn't let you shift gears? But no, it does.
It's a good point, though. It shouldn't, should it?
Yeah, same with the DRS. Sometimes I'm hitting the DRS and the hand doesn't come across on the steering wheel to do it, and I'm like, has it done it? And I look behind, and I'm like, yeah, it has.
Psychic DRS.
Yes.
I've had to turn my engine up because I inadvertently overfueled my car.
I've done the same. I'm on rich fuel free, but then I always put extra in my car because traditionally in the last game, it was faster to fuel your car up and go mixed fuel free than to actually just, like, not do so much. But have you seen, actually, if you put more fuel in the tank, it now actually affects what your projected race time is this year in this game?
Yeah, which it always should have done, to be honest.
Yes.
And you can actually feel the car get lighter in a way that seems more noticeable than it was in previous versions of the game.
Yes.
Because I know that really became a thing in 2015, because you and I always fought against that McLaren because it was a dog when it was fully loaded with fuel. And the Sauber is the same, actually, in this game. That Sauber handles better and better as the fuel tank empties. I can't think and drive at the same time. I'm turning it down, actually, because what I've noticed in this game, and we shouldn't be talking about the game, I know. No!
That was AI being shit.
One more try?
No, we're okay. We'd got far enough. So I'd had a wiggle out of turn 1, and the AI just drove not into me, but like didn't move off the racing line, so they just careered into me into the barrier. So never mind. But we've got you to watch, so it's all good.
Are you sure? Because we can.
No, it's fine.
There's a good chance I'm going to bin it. Well, as you wish. You can then do the heavy lifting and the bulk of the conversation. But one thing I have noticed in this game, and we'll get off the game as quickly as possible, is that I'm marginal on fuel in ways that I've never been before. And actually, in my Bahrain Grand Prix, I fueled the car to maximum.
Yeah.
And based on my race strategy and everything, I still started the race with 1 3/4 laps under fueling with a full tank. So I had to run quite a long stint in that race on fuel mix 1 to claw back almost 2 laps of fuel, and even then I was constantly having to make adjustments to balance it. And I think also having my ERS on auto hurt my fuel economy.
Yeah.
We have it on auto here, but we can change it. Actually, I meant to speak to you, but I forgot ERS was a thing when we were setting up the game. But I think there is every incentive to manually control your ERS yourself, and we should be doing it.
Yep, I find it easier to do that as well. Let's dive on board with you for a bit. So what was we talking about?
You can get some screenshots actually and send them to me, because we've only ever had screenshots from you. This is because actually normally me that bins it during the race.
We'll be fine. What was I going to say? What was next on our topic list? So
we've done Force India, we've done most of the driver carousel. Shall we talk about the 2021 engine regulations being potentially deferred?
Yes, and the confusion
because
that now brings.
Even Red Bull are now apparently open to the idea of postponing the 2021 engine regulations. And I found that particularly surprising, because I mean they are in a strange position, right? Because they've got this very close buddy-buddy relationship with Aston Martin. Yeah. That made me think that they were really chomping at the bit to have the engine regulations set to something that was more new competitor friendly. But maybe they've got a bit more confidence in this Honda relationship than you may be inclined to think, because now they seem to be much more conservative in outlook and actually say that they're open to retaining the current power units beyond 2021. Maybe Aston Martin have had a word in the ear and said, well, actually, we've seen the potential costs and we're no longer interested in developing our own power unit.
Well, especially as that it's not bringing in any new suppliers, then it kind of begs the question, well, what are we doing it for? And as we've said this long before, in that the longer you give a regulation time to mature and develop, we're seeing the grids are closing up. They're already doing the front wing changes, so that's in theory going to make the racing closer. As everything starts to become more pariteous, I know it's not a real word, but you know what I mean, then it does start to beg the question why. But then when we go back to earlier in the podcast, there's also the whole stop making driver changes and things like that for things that aren't going to happen. So yeah, it makes it a very interesting world out there, which is fun, I think, because then you start to think, right, well, if I was in my shoes as a driver or even as a constructor, I would be much more inclined to continue developing what I've got now, because for me the writing's already on the wall of those changes, because you wouldn't push them ahead if everyone's now saying no.
Yeah, I mean, I understand why everyone else would be for it, save for McLaren, of course, because it's going to be hugely expensive to change the formula again. And even though these engines are complex and expensive, and they are a deterrent to people entering the sport, you've already done the lion's share of the expensive work on them.
Yeah.
So now it's about getting value from that investment. And the longer these engines are in play, the more financial sense over the long term that investment is going to make. So, I mean, part of me is quite happy about this, because you and I were saying last year that we were actually quite happy with how close a lot of the races were turning out to be.
Yeah.
It's a bit more two-tier this year, in some respects, but not all.
Yeah.
And we were scared that tweaking the formula now may actually make things even worse.
Lewis in.
Which I still think is a reasonable concern to have.
Yeah, I agree. But I think the two-tier approach this year is because Halo is a thing that's introduced. So again, it spreads things out. I think next year, potentially, we will stay two-tier because it's the new front wing that gets introduced. And then after that, I think if you just leave things alone for a few years, assuming the front wing actually does what it's supposed to do, you'll be all right. And then F1 is delightful and joyous. I think Lewis is two-stopping, by the way. So if you're one-stopping, you might have him because he's got a shit ton of traffic to get through. I feel like I can race engineer you now as well. This is good.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so for me, leave stuff alone. Like, when I think about the years where stuff has been generally really, really close, I think of 2008 and 2009, once those regulations had kind of been there for a few years all at once. 2012 was a few years after that big change in 2010. That was a great year of lots and lots of teams being able to fight for podiums and wins. And then 2013 was kind of still there and thereabouts. Raikkonen's in now as well.
Oh, he's two-stopping too.
Yeah.
Bonza, mate.
They both were on Ultras. So everyone that's on Supers has stayed on. Oh, Ricardo's in as well behind you. Oh, they're all coming in, actually. So that might help Lewis, who's stuck behind Stoffel. Lol.
Lol.
Oh, he's nearly been taken out by Stoffel. Oh, he's leapfrogged Kimi, though, in the pits. Nice. Good moves. Anyway, what was I going to say? Yeah, so the thing that you've got is, traditionally, formulas will always close back up again. The more things you introduce to try and, quote-unquote, spice up the racing, actually, it just favours the teams with the budget that can cope. So, it'll be interesting to see.
Do you think we may see some new teams arising from this regulation deferment? Because part of me thinks we might. I know the tender process has been open for, well, basically since Marussia folded.
Yeah.
So there are licenses up for grabs, just no one credible has come forward for them. But I mean, now engine prices are starting to come down. I mean, it's still expensive. It's way more expensive than the V8s were, but they are coming down. I do wonder if, okay, maybe we don't see any new manufacturers entering, but maybe we get a team or two. I mean, I really think we need at least 12 teams on the grid. Ideally 14 teams, but...
I was looking at older replays of stuff, and it just looks like the grid's emaciated. Verstappen and Bottas are one-stopping because they've gone to soft tyres. The problem for me is... Oh, Bottas has come out into a nice gap, so he's well in the lead and winning this race. The issue is that there's still... The barrier to entry is still too high, and Liberty need to start working on that now. Because Haas done it because they've bought half of a Ferrari and then just had to pay the entry fee. I don't know of any other teams or manufacturers that can dive in at that level and still be okay to continue round, because like there's a part of me that when I look at GP2 teams or Formula 2 or GP3 teams, there's a few things that I think, oh, okay, you've been around for years and you're capable and you're good as like a well-oiled machine, but you just don't have the capability of stepping up. And the big stick out for me was when Carlin Racing decided to not go to F1, and they've gone and made an IndyCar team with 2 cars in because of how cheap and easy and simple it is to get going over there. And there's something that F1 is lacking, to be able to have quote-unquote credible teams get off the grid and get going. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Vettel's onto softs as well, so he's one stopping. Let's see your pit stop. Oh, I didn't realise your helmet had a lovely little chrome.
Your comments have been pushed up, but regulation changes do need to incentivise someone somewhere. Absolutely, because either you need to be enticing new engine manufacturers or you need to be enticing new teams. And part of me thought there was an outside chance that this decision to defer the 2021 regulation change was in part to try and draw a team in. Because I still think if we're going to accept the Haas model is a reality now, then I don't see why you couldn't have a Mercedes equivalent to Haas at least.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
By the same measure, I don't think that's really something I want to see. It's hard, right? Because I don't really want to be rocking the boat too much now, but also I am disappointed about things I read in the news, such as Kevin Magnussen claiming he's now competing for a driver's championship he has invented in his own head. That is a genuine news story.
Best for the rest, isn't it? Yeah. Because it does feel so two-tiered. And it reminds me of... I can't remember if it was a Ron Dennis compilation that I was watching on YouTube, because someone had put Ron
That's
Speak.
a hell of a compilation.
It was a 2-hour Ron Speak compilation, and I was like, this is going to be glorious. I did actually sit down with some popcorn to watch it.
What manner of insanity is happening up in front of me?
Oh, I'm trying to find... Lots
Every
of people pitted.
car in the world.
So you've got Leclerc has not pitted, and then loads of people that hadn't pitted, but they're all trying to get round Leclerc, who's not pitted yet. That's why.
Okay, because I have no idea where I actually am now, what my real race position is, because I pitted came out.
You're one down because Ricciardo leapfrogged you, but everyone else is okay. But Hamilton's only just got past Leclerc, who's at the head of your train, and he's got to stop again because he's on softs, super softs. He can't make them last.
Okay, so I've lost a place and gained a place. That's fine. I can live with that.
Oh, he's on ultras.
In an Alan Partridge way, I have a bit of bad news, but a bit of good news to cancel it out, so it's fine.
Yeah. No, you're okay. Oh, Leclerc's gone straight on. I love that the AI are genuinely having dramas.
I don't know what the hell happened there, but I braked even before the braking point.
It was Leclerc.
He was going to sandwich me, wasn't he?
Oh, no!
Oh! Shall we have a classic race? It's a double DNF.
Force failure in pure action.
I was so careful with him as well. I was so careful.
He seemed to be wriggling around quite a lot.
Well, because, I didn't mean to attack him, first of all, but I didn't lock the brakes either.
No?
But the car just went way further than I thought it would, and I had to move to the left and end up alongside him. I backed out and followed him out of the corner.
Ultraman Nexus has put wrecked racing point. I like it.
What annoys me is that when you and I have accidents, sometimes they're very similar, and you manage to come away with your wheels intact, and my wheels pop off at the slightest insult.
Yeah. That, I tell you what, when you look at that back, it took out Ricciardo as well.
Good.
You might kind of go, maybe that wasn't on, but he was well wobbly already.
Because, I mean, I don't know if it was... I mean, maybe it was my fault, but I backed away from him twice, but I was faster than him in both cases. So, as the man himself says, sometimes you've got to lick the stamp and send it. And he didn't leave me anywhere to go. Like, I had to turn on the inside of that corner because he'd already tried to slam me against the barrier on the outside. So, I kind of feel that was his fault, but you saw it. What's the verdict? What's the verdict of chat?
Ultraman has put in karma, I think, for Ricardo being retired as well. He didn't leave you much room, but you was to the inside of the curb. So I don't know.
Shall we do a classic race then for the last 20 minutes?
Yeah, go on then.
Round out the episode.
Yeah, because we've still got a couple of things we wanted to chinwag about before we finish. How funny is that? We've not had a double DNF for ages.
It's been years since we had a... Beetlejuice says he sees it as my fault. It probably was. The frustration got the better of me. But I did feel he was driving badly. Like, I thought he was being a cock. What surprised me was...
The sirens coming to pick up the cars.
On board with me. When I braked into that first corner and overshot him, that's what really messed me up. And I thought there was going to be an accident then, because the car just didn't stop. And
Never mind. Ultraman has asked, who do we think we will win the Belgian Grand Prix? We'll have to make sure we discuss that before we go.
Yeah. Well, why don't we use this classic race now to talk about qualifying
yes, please.
And predictions for the race. Let's do a one-shot qualifying 5-lapper. That should be enough, eh?
Yeah.
Classic C1, C2, or C3?
Should we do the 70s cars because they're the new lot?
That's the C1, isn't it?
Thanks.
Okay, and then everything.
It'll be scary, but we'll make it.
Oh no, C1 is not the ones we want. We want C3.
Ah.
PO. We'll do the 3-car teams again. Nice. And I will invite you now, and then we can crack on.
I'm here already.
What are you talking about? Did I already invite you?
Yeah.
Bruh. They let me do it twice. Okay, which
so
car
welcome.
are you having? The old China.
I feel like I want to go for a Lotai.
Me too, actually. It's a Lotus kind of day, isn't it?
Yeah. I do like this.
Now I'm trying to think, because I seem to be very crash happy today, I'm trying to think which one looks the least crashy. And to be honest, they all look incredibly unsafe.
They do. I've gone for the 78. Lotus 79, which is very confusing. That's a name.
It's a good looking car, isn't it?
That's why I went for it.
I'm going to go for the 72D then.
Oh.
Which track, since we both seem to hate Australia today?
Should we do Spa, since we're at the Spa weekend?
Oh, we're going to die.
I know,
yes,
but we'll be fine.
Let's do that. Let us begin.
Just be careful at the top of Radion, because that is
10 out of 10 for that comment.
poor. What's he put?
Unsafe. What do you mean? The fuel tank doubles as a seat. What's not safe about that?
Jet propulsion.
The problem was that everything in the 70s was very flammable. The moustaches are just the beginning.
They would light one car to the next. Boop, boop.
All that cord and suede. It's very flammable.
Nom nom nom. That's Radion actually. Alright, Ultraman. I'm going for just a default setup in the middle. I'm not even trying
I'm going for
anything.
increased top speed because I have a death wish.
Christ.
Oh god, it's wet. Actually, then in that case, no.
Oh, good job you pointed. Oh, it's
I
sunny for
didn't
the
set
race
that, by
though.
the way.
Oh, it says dry but overcast for me, and then dry with clear sky for the race.
But it will only let me pick wet tyres.
I'm only on dry tyres.
It genuinely won't let me pick any of the tyre.
It's got a D in the middle, yeah?
No.
What? Everything's just drunk.
Are we in different universes? Is this one of those famous Codemasters bugs?
No, I'm dry here.
Oh, I am dry here also. Am I qualifying on wet tyres? Is this... what was the name of that guy? Perry McCarthy.
Oh, yeah. Andrea Moda extraordinaire.
Yeah, he drove for Andrea Moda and they used to put him out in qualifying on wet tyres. Because they didn't want him to qualify.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, I'm qualifying on wet tyres, I think. This car is really slow. It feels like I'm driving through treacle.
My car is very slow as well, but it's because it was running out of power going up Eau Rouge.
What is going on? I feel like I'm driving with the pit limiter on.
Da-da-da-da-da. I feel like I'm driving the pit limiter on, yet still go on at Lecom. Oh dear.
I do love the classic cars though, they are fun to drive. I'm kind of glad we're a double DNF now.
This has
Because it
cheered me
would
up
feel
no
cheesy
end.
as well to come out of the first round with like a massive points advantage. I think it robs us of a close season. I think we will be quite close over the length. I mean, once we move to PS4, this podcast got a lot tighter, I think.
Yes, I'm much more at home on this. Oh, spinning up poo on. Pooing literally.
Right, we were talking about something before we weren't talking about it. What was the thing?
Quali.
Oh, that's right, quali, right. So I'm going to caveat this, and maybe chat can fill us in, because I actually missed a lot of Q3 because the Formula 1 streaming service is pants. But what I did see, obviously we've already talked about McLaren's absolutely dismal performance. Now, I would have put money on Merrickson and Leclerc making it through to Q3, but he seemed to have a technical problem that ruled him out. But both did make it into Q2, and I don't know if this is all down to the new Ferrari power unit, but I know Gunther Steiner at Haas was raving about how brilliant this new power unit is. But obviously, Sauber being our favourite team, this was exciting. Oh, neither of us got pole.
I'm still going.
Yeah, me too. I only just crossed the line because I balls last double corner. Exciting to see them in Q2, and I think it shows actually how tight the midfield has been throughout the season, because obviously we'll get onto Force India later on, but there was quite a few surprise results for me. I was interested to see that the Toro Rossos were quite closely matched for all the session that I watched. Brendan Hartley seemed to be a lot more on it with Gasly. And I was kind of hoping rain would come before it did, or I presume it did, because it wasn't raining when my stream cut out, but I was really hoping it would have come in Q2, because I think that would have had a chance to really stir the pot even further than it was. What I am hearing is that, yet again, Red Bull were not good in the wet, and this still comes as a surprise to a lot of people, and to me, because you always sort of think Red Bull, wet weather, it kind of seems like it should go together. Yeah, particularly with Verstappen and Ricciardo behind the wheel, you kind of just assume that they're going to be on it in the wet, but they ostensibly were not. Now, Ricciardo struggled all day, and I don't know what was causing him that trouble. I know that he switched from a higher downforce setup to a lower downforce setup before the session began. But I still think, didn't he get some time in third practice with this, going back to lower downforce? So I don't think it was brand new to him. I was going to ask you for your opinion, Simon, but I know you didn't actually see qualifying, so felt like how good that's going to do. But it did confused me a little bit to see him struggle so much. But it's not the first time this season, actually, that we've seen him completely struggle for pace. Because wasn't he having a problem at Hockenheim?
Yeah, he was not great there either for a lot of it. The other thing is that obviously he barely had any time in FP1 because he had a Renault engine problem then. So he's very much down on lack of track time, so that won't have helped his life either. Oh,
I think I've... Oh, someone's facing the wrong way.
it is.
I think I've run out of gears. I seem to run out of gears on the straights, and everyone's just getting away from me. This is the... I wonder if this is the slowest car in the pack.
It is, because all of your 72 Lotuses were 9 seconds off pole.
Scary.
The 82 McLaren, I think it is like about 3 seconds faster than everyone else, but that's the car that spun to last, so...
See, now this is what bothers me about the classic cars, because you and I have had this bugbear for a while now. Like, give us classic cars that are comparable.
Exactly.
But it is fun to drive. I am liking this Lotus. It is quite pointy, but
It feels
floaty at the same
grippy.
time.
Yeah. I feel like I'm in a hovercraft race.
That's actually quite a good analogy. Anyway, we should try and keep it on topic.
Yes.
Raikkonen was the first, I believe, to fell the new lap record set by a cheating Porsche. But ultimately, it was Vettel that took pole, I believe. Obviously, the standout news really was third and fourth for Racing Point for Stroll.
Oh wow!
Yeah, now that really, really pleased me because it didn't strike me as likely. I mean, their pace was good. But if I was going to put money at the start of the session on a shock result, it would have been on the Saubers, obviously. So while Force India have always run well at Spa, and you'll recall a few years back, was it Fisichella qualified on the front row?
Yeah, he got pole in 09, didn't he, and then finished second in the race.
Yeah. So I mean, and since then they've always been respectable there. But it must be something about Spa and wet weather that really suits the car this year. Either that or the setup was just appropriate for it. Is that you?
Yes.
God damn.
It is literally car dependent though. And look at that Ferrari going for it.
Ooh. Bye, nerds!
You gave me a little love tap on the way.
Of course I did.
Nice. Oh good, I'm so glad, because now that they've got 0 points, they are 10th in the Constructors, so they should overhaul Williams this weekend if it goes well, and then they can set on about Sauber and co. After.
I do love your helmet.
Thanks!
It goes well with a black car as well. Oh, bit of a wobble for you there, Chief.
That's exactly where I dropped it in my quali lap.
Why can't we race like this without taking each other off when we're actually racing for our season?
Well, we didn't take each other off in Australia when we were next to each other. We were okay. It was the AI that took us off each time.
Oh, we both went a bit wide there. So yeah, I mean, I have no explanation for what it is. People were telling me that if Perez had one more lap, he probably would have beaten Ocon to take third. But alas, it was not to be. Oh, you are long gone now.
Yeah, this is car dependent, much more.
But ultimately, I'm just so happy, as you are, to see them come back so strongly from a period of real turmoil. And the fact that no jobs have been lost is nothing short of a fucking miracle, frankly.
Yeah.
There were some great shots as well from inside the Force India garage taken by our friend over there, Mr. Will Panisi, of them jumping up and down and hugging each other, and very reminiscent of Toro Rosso celebrating Pierre Gasly's result in Bahrain. I feel I was robbed by the Formula One streaming service that I didn't get to see Q3 because that seems to be where all the action was. I felt very sorry for Merrickson. The consolatory tap on the back tells me that there was some sort of problem with his car that stopped him going out in Q2. I also felt sorry for Hulkenberg because Sainz had a shocking quali. He made a mistake on the lap that could have saved him and ultimately went out in Q1. But I think maybe Hulkenberg could have fared better, but he had no incentive to run because obviously he and Bottas picked up a penalty. Pick up a penalty. No!
Oh, is that you?
Okay, clear.
Yeah, but it's alright, you should see the other guy.
I can see there are cars that are stopped.
Someone's lost a wheel.
Yeah, someone's
Oh, nearly lost it again there.
The inside curb on Puon does not like me at all.
Have I damaged something? No, I'm surprisingly intact.
That simulation damage. Oh, okay. So,
Sorry, I lost my train of thought there.
what did Bottas and Hulkenberg have penalties for? Is that gearbox or engine?
Power unit component changes.
Oh, okay.
That was it. Mercedes sent Bottas out in Q2, and my stream cut out before I ever really understood why they would do that. I mean, Brundle was saying, well, perhaps they were, it was just conditioning, or just getting some running in for the sake of it. But there was no real incentive to have him out there. Renault didn't even bother. They put Hulkenberg out in Q3 and he made it into Q2, but then there was just no point in putting wear on the components, frankly, and I don't really blame them. And this throws up for me another common talking point, that should we really be having these penalties, or should the penalties be so strict? And I can't answer that question to my own satisfaction, because I kind of feel like they have to be there. But I do feel that we are robbed of some level of competition by doing it. No! Did that on purpose. I'll be honest, I did that on purpose. I was a bit bitter.
Oh, we've gone rampaging again. I'd That was me. That was my fault. What was I going to say? Yeah, the penalty thing. I think for me, I still support penalties to a point. I'm not entirely sure what is ever going to be satisfactory, because for me, reliability has always been the part of life. Anyway, but we've almost had reliability removed so much from races compared to what we used to do. So to me, that's kind of where reliability now rears its head the most. And sometimes actually it gives us a much better race, because we've got people charging.
Occasionally, yeah, it delivers something good. And maybe tomorrow I'm singing a different tune, right? Maybe tomorrow it turns out that Bottas has been the highlight of the day, fighting from the back. But I just don't see it. And ultimately, what tends to happen is you get a lot of overtakes, but the end result isn't really any different. Like if it ended up helping someone like Hulkenberg get on the podium, then I'm all in favour of it. But really, that's not what happens usually. Usually, it's just a case of like Schumacher at Monaco. That year, he was done for cheating.
Yeah.
He starts at the back, yeah, but he still ends up getting to the front. So ultimately, what have we gained apart from seeing a few interesting overtakes?
Yeah, and that's a result of the two-tier formula as well, isn't it? Because the people that are going to be affected the most are the people who can just coast their way back up to where they were anyway. Instead of finishing fourth, it might be sixth. So yeah, I kind of see it, but then I don't know what punishment should fit the crime, and should a crime be there for retirement? Should the retirement itself and the cost it takes to repair something be the punishment enough? I don't know. I miss a good engine blowout.
What position are you in, the old China plate?
I am in a very lonely ninth as I try to throw it off into the barriers.
I am trying to get up to 15th, and I'm doing it by murdering everyone who gets in my way. And surprisingly, my car is still intact, despite how many people I have hit, and hit violently.
Hey. So, as we are on the last lap, who do we have as a prediction for tomorrow? Who's on pole, actually? I don't even know.
It's Vettel.
Oh, okay.
Vettel ahead of Hamilton. Ocon third, Perez fourth.
Ooh. Okay, so I would like to see Vettel win then, because that will be good for El Championship. But Hamilton does better around Spa.
Was it Hamilton pole? I thought it was Vettel. Everything I saw said Vettel. Okay, apparently it's Hamilton on pole.
Oh, okay.
So it must be Vettel second then. But I swear down, I saw someone saying that Vettel had set the new record round Spa.
Not for long.
Okay, well apparently I don't know what I'm talking about. This really is a failcast. A double DNF and then getting the pole man wrong. So we really are reaching new peaks here. Regardless, I actually think Vettel will win no matter where he starts. I just get the feeling that it's a Ferrari circuit.
They were punchy yesterday, weren't they?
Yeah, and I just sort of see it going Ferrari's way. In terms of other predictions, which I think tend to be the more interesting ones, I could actually see double points for Sauber, double points for Force India.
Oh, yes, please. That would make me happy. Cool. Anyone else want to chuck in there?
How does Bottas start 10th? Because he's supposed to start at the back of the grid. Because he's got penalties, right? So surely whoever was 11th will take 10th. The interesting thing is I do not see double points for Haas. I don't know why. I just don't seem to have any faith in their ability to finish races. No, because I mean, Grosjean is Grosjean, which tends to be a problem. But I just don't see them pulling double points. I don't know why. And the Sauber looks so good, and I think circumstance more than anything interfered with their qualifying performances. I don't know. Now I'm thinking about it, it's hard to call, because assuming Grosjean doesn't bin it, then maybe they will, but I could see on race pace the Sauber being up there in the top 10, both of them. Because, I mean, Ericsson was putting in some good laps as well. I still think Leclerc has his number, but...
Okay, Ultraman's just answered your question. Vettel set the new lap record, but it was on dry sets of tyres in Q2 and not Q3.
That'll be why I got confused. Thank you. You have somewhat redeemed my honour. Not much, just a little bit. Just a little bit.
Boo. Well, I'm going to go for a Vettel win. I'd like a double points for Force India points, please. I'd love a double points finish for Sauber. I'm going to be a bit more conservative and not necessarily predict that, though. And I predict that Van Dorn will be last if he finishes at all.
Me too, but I feel that's kind of cheating because it just seems the obvious thing. I can see him getting in front of the Williams only to be leapfrogged after the pits.
No.
And that's assuming he finishes.
Yes.
It's assuming he finishes.
Cool.
Well, that rounds out our 2 hours. Apologies for the double DNF, guys, but at least it keeps things on a level pegging going into round 2.
We'll be fine. But yeah, we'll be back with some more Failcast F1 action in 2 weeks' time. Again, 4 p.m. on the Saturday, where we will try to keep it out of the barriers and each other's other people's cars. We was all right with each other for once.
It tends to be difficult with a new game. That's the problem, to be honest. I think if we were doing this on F1 2017, those incidents wouldn't have happened. So once we get used to the AI, have a few more races under our belts in the meantime, we should survive a bit longer.
And game launch coming out literally the day before the podcast, probably. No, but we're fine.
Welcome to the excuse cast.
Yay!
But also, I found actually, I put today up there with Monaco as one of the hardest to host podcasts I've done in ages because I'm so scared of that car and the new track physics and everything that my hands are sweaty and I'm like, ugh, trying to just hold the car on the track, that I lose the ability to speak. So we will see you in 2 weeks' time where we can articulate the news and we don't kill each other. Have a great weekend, guys. Thank you to everyone who joined us. It's amazingly appreciated. We have a lot of fun having back and forth, answering the questions and talking good old F1.
Indeed. Bye, all.
Love you, bye.
Mwah.